we moved from product going into distribution centers in full cases, and those full cases going to stores, and then people would put them on the shelf so you and I could go buy them.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't happen anymore, right? So now all of those full cases are opened up at the distribution center, and the worker has to take out the each, right? The bottle of water, if you will. And then that goes in, maybe you mix that with a bottle of water and I don't know, a mobile phone or something, things I'm looking at now. And then that goes into a parcel, right? So everything at this each level has caused, it's adding to the challenge because there's just not enough human labor to manage all those eaches.
The Industrial Sage Executive Series, sharing the stories behind game-changing executives, their organizations, and insights into today's industry challenges.
Well, hello and welcome to today's Industrial Sage Executive Series interview. I'm joined by Jim Leifer, who is the CEO of Ambi Robotics. Jim, thank you so much for joining me today on the Executive Series.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me here, Danny.
Well, I'm excited to jump into our episode, learn a little bit more about you, learn a little bit more about Ambi. So it sounds like you're a robotics company based on the name. I'm just kind of going on a limb there.
We are an AI robotics company. That is absolutely right.
So tell me a little bit about what exactly are you guys doing? What are the problems that you're solving today?
Yeah. So Ambi Robotics is an AI robotics company, as you guessed. We are developing solutions that empower people. Primarily, we are in the world of supply chain at the moment. So we're enabling those humans to work smarter. And if you think of it in the way of right now, the work that they do out there in the parcel world in that industry, and also in the fulfillment world for retail operations, they are moving packages and parcels around, and our technology allows them to become robot handlers instead of package handlers. And that is what the technology does, and that is where our focus is today.
Excellent. All right. Well, sounds good. Sounds like, like a lot of other companies that we've talked to, there has just been such a huge acceleration of automation, robotics, technology to solve a lot of the challenges that are going on now that were honestly present before the pandemic, but certainly accelerated afterwards exponentially with you mentioned specifically, in the parcel or warehousing. I mean, e-commerce has exploded.
Absolutely.
And then there's nobody there. The labor has dropped. So
yeah, it's
kind of
a couple of things, right? So the way that I always think of this is that all of us consumers were on this path anyway of moving from brick and mortar shopping into e-commerce, going on our phone, having something arrive at our door, basically. And then when the pandemic hit, it just accelerated that 5 or 10 years. And I also, the way that I've seen this, at least here at Ambi Robotics, is that during that time where everyone was sort of in their bunker, like during the pandemic, there was a lot of progress made on the AI side, a lot of progress made around robotics and configurations. And as you said, Danny, there aren't humans anymore. So it created this moment where the customer sort of has to find this solution because we can't serve the need anymore. So that's sort of like the journey through the pandemic as I see it.
Oh, sure, absolutely. And I'm excited to kind of jump into that a little bit more, as we get in a little bit later in the episode. Right now, it's one of my favorite parts. This is when I want to get to learn a little bit more about you. We get to learn more about Jim. Jim, so tell me, how did you get into this industry? How did you get into this space? Take me back.
Okay. You can see I have a few years on me, so we'll go way back.
You don't look any older than 25. Come on, man.
So I actually started as a computer operator for a bank. And so I also was a mainframe systems operator, had the overnight shift. I was the sole operator, by the way, for this bank. So I had this huge amount of responsibility on me to make sure that all the systems were working every day when the bank opened. So eventually I moved from that sort of heavy set of responsibility into the world of 3PL. I worked for a third-party logistics provider, air and ocean freight and all of that around the world. UPS acquired that 3PL in the early 2000s. So now I became a UPSer. And through all of that, through all of that time at UPS on the technology side, I was exposed to different sort of systems and what we were doing for customers. And then I moved from UPS over to Walmart e-commerce as VP of operations at Walmart. Had a lot of responsibility for the e-commerce fulfillment buildings and supply chain for Walmart e-commerce. And all of that time, I was sort of in the chair of looking for solutions to the problem being solving for process, solving for new volume, solving for the labor side. So that is where I started on the big company side. And then after 6 holidays at Walmart, I moved into the exciting world of startups and eventually made my way to the first startup, the AI robotics, was Kindred. And I was there helping them with that product that would serve the apparel industry. And then made my way over here to Ambi about 16 months ago as the CEO here at Ambi Robotics.
Well, that's awesome. Well, congratulations on that. It sounds like a interesting, progression, interesting, journey into that. Throughout that sort of time period, maybe if you could share with me a story or somebody who's had like an impact on your career. Could be a mentor, could be somebody gave you some great advice. I know most of the time people have a lot and they kind of struggle to kind of pare that down, but share with me, like, who's that one person for you?
So there were many people along the way. I would say the person who changed the way I think about being in the professional world and also being a leader is a gentleman who came to be my manager in the late 90s, came to that 3PL that I mentioned. And he had this perfect blend of challenging the team, uplifting the team, and protecting the team. And there's a lot of, his name is Gene. And so I always say there's Gene-isms that I talk about all the time. So I hear his voice in my head. I hear him saying different things that make me much more of a servant leader and being humble. And he changed sort of everything I think about leadership.
I like it. Well, okay, share with me what's a Gene-ism that you can share with us.
Well, an easy one is catch people doing something right. So he was a big believer in, like, don't wait for the moments when you have to tell people, hey, you did that wrong, but catch them doing something right. That's one. I can give you a second one. The second one is, and it's very corny, but he said, anytime you're pointing your finger at somebody, there's 3 fingers pointing back at you, which, a lot of people say that, but he would always say that. So don't blame others. Many of those things that just overall how to carry yourself and look out for the team just meant a lot to me always. And we have, just speaking of that, we have an amazing team here that I think of every day as, like, caring for this team is like my top priority.
That's awesome. I love that. I especially love that you call them Gene-isms, and you obviously able to quickly rattle them off. And I like it, corny or not, whatever. There's 3 fingers pointing back at you when you point at one. I love that. I'm curious how. I think I know the answer to this, but how is that? Obviously, it's influenced your style, your leadership. You mentioned servant leadership there, and you mentioned that was back when you were at the 3PL. Was that before UPS acquired them?
Yeah.
And then okay, and was it stuff with those Gene-isms as you kind of progressed and you sort of moved up the ladder, so to speak? Was there a point where it just kind of clicked and you started saying, hey, I need to go ahead and put these into play? Or, because a lot of times, you'll go through this stuff and it takes time to kind of absorb. And then there's a moment where things kind of shift. You say, oh, wow, I completely understand from a leadership standpoint how viable and important this is.
Yeah, so it's a combination of things. So first, meeting Gene and all of those things that are Gene-isms, but also the way that he thought about employee engagement and surveying. And so all of those things to take care of the team. And then, as I told you in my career, when I moved to Walmart, like Walmart is the place where I heard that term, servant leadership. And so when and by the way, so Gene and I worked together in several places, the 3PL, we worked together at UPS. He then kind of came to Walmart after I was at Walmart. So the point of that is it's a build, right? So I had that foundation, those things I learned from Gene, and then also all of the way that Walmart leadership works and thinks about the customer. So like layering that in is like there's a strong customer component. One of the Walmart sayings is that the customer is always right. So I believe that strongly. And then when you tie into the other aspects of Walmart of like everyday low cost is another big one for Walmart. And then respect for the individual and servant leadership, like just those components, it just made sense to me. I couldn't think of leading in any other way. And I think it served me really well to this point around being humble, servant leadership, passion, all of those things.
Oh, I love it. I think it's one of my favorite stories I've learned. I love, especially that you have some terminology around it, Geneisms. It's very catchy. I get it. So I'm definitely going to be stealing some Geneisms. I'd love to hear more later down the road. So, well, very cool. Let's kind of pivot a little bit now. Let's go back to Ambi a little bit. You were talking about, obviously we've got a lot of issues with supply chain, with labor. You guys are helping to solve some of that. One of I guess a big question that I'd have is there's been a huge influx of robotics companies. I mean, if we look over the last several years, it was growing and emerging. One big thing that jumped out to me was we were at Modex in 2020. I mean, there were AMRs everywhere, AMRs, AGV, everything. Robotic arms, cobots, Spot was there, of course. But going back in 2018, it was a little less, and then further, low, and there's a huge emergence of it now. What is your biggest sort of point of differentiation from the crowd, so to speak?
Yeah. Okay, so we'll weave this together. So have the technology component, right? And so just to drill into that for a moment, on the technology component, it's easy to get very excited about that. Being the inside at the AI robotic company and all of that, you can get really into your own tech and you can tell yourself that the simulation to reality transfer learning is the most important thing and it's really exciting. And the way that the mechanization works with the handoff between the software side and the mechanical side, that's really cool. And I say that because as words of caution, yes, that's really cool. But and the way that we're differentiated is the customer doesn't actually care about those things specifically, right? Mm-hmm. The customer, and this is where Ambi is very different. The customer cares about their throughput, the volume that's coming at them, the uptime, the ability to reposition labor and human labor, reposition in their places of buildings and whatnot. And that is the primary differentiator for Ambi, is that we care about the key metrics that the customer cares about. And yes, it's great that we have the technology to rely on and we can bring the solution. But if you're not shoulder to shoulder with the customer, being attentive to those key metrics for them, I don't know how you can truly win, because you win when they win. So that is, I think, and I want to go back to what you were saying about Modex. I saw the same thing. This Modex that we just came from a couple months ago, kind of shocking how much technology there is, like everywhere, like robots and picking robots and all of that. As I said though, like there has to be a lot of realness, right? It actually has to be solving their problem, their specific problem that you have to configure for. Otherwise, it doesn't matter.
No, you're 100% right. I mean, that's the product manager or the product developer's challenge, right? Hey, this is super cool. This is great tech. That's awesome. But is there an addressable market? What's that need that you're tangibly solving? So one of the key thing you mentioned that you were shoulder to shoulder with the customer. What does that look like specifically? Let's say as you're going through R&D, what are those practical things that you're doing to get that, to really have a true understanding of your customer's needs, to develop something that says, hey, this needs to be addressed, and there's a need for this.
Yeah. Okay. The first part is it's helpful that you have knowledge of what's happening within the four walls. I mean, that's useful. I told you I came from UPS and Walmart.
That's helpful. That's helpful.
One
Yes.
Kings Lane, that's super helpful, is to have that understanding, know the terminology. That aside, going and looking at the sites and understanding, because you can't say that let's use Walmart and Target as two examples. You can't say that the two of those two entities are providing fulfillment operation in the same way, right? There's all kinds of different permutations. And in fact, within any of those large retail entities, they might be doing it different ways at their different buildings, because one of them is more manual, one of them has more high-speed sortation and so forth. So going through the operation and understanding the process and understanding what's causing pain to the people there, the people at the line level and the supervisors and others. So that is the key when you develop the system. And the Ambi solutions are highly configurable, both on the software and the hardware side. So that's what allows us to, and I'll give you a couple examples. We can be upstream before high-speed sortation. We can be doing something around induction, or after high-speed sortation, you can then provide more output locations from a AI robotic perspective. But it just depends on what the customer needs in that site and for that market.
No, absolutely. No, that makes a lot of sense. What are some of the big challenges? I mean, obviously we know that, labor is a massive one. Supply chain is another really big one, which are very interrelated. What are some of these challenges, though, beyond that, are you seeing with your customers, or even in the industry in general?
Yeah. So in the industry in general, let's first say for AI robotics industry. Okay. Yeah. So what are those challenges? And the way that I always think of it is like, for a startup, for any of those, like where we are creating solutions that have never been in the world before. Mm-hmm. And also, by the way, like the same kinds of challenges that businesses have that have been around for a long time, which is around focus. So as I said a moment ago, like focus on the customer, take care of your team, and then I would say like making sure that you have the ability to deploy what you say you're going to deploy. So it comes down to like, it's all the basic stuff of like, do what you say you're going to do, right? If that's what you commit to, then do it. Like that's the big overarching. Going to like the broader industry around, let's just say supply chain, is this phenomenal growth that happened, as we said, in the compression time of the pandemic is ongoing. Like the number of, if you think about supply chain in terms of last year, there were something like 130 billion parcels in the world. 130 billion is like this number to like wrap your head around. And then only something like 25 billion of that was in the US. So there's this like, and all of those parcels are being touched like 3 to 5 times. So it's an enormous problem, I guess is what I'm saying. Like from a challenge perspective, there are so many places to kind of go after that problem, all kinds of different directions. But that is the challenge, is like the volume, the speed that all of us as consumers are demanding that we have it to our door, and the variation of all of those parcels, right? So it's like everything from like little tiny things to like very large and flat things and rigid and deformable and all that. So I think there are sort of like seemingly endless challenges around those problems and different ways that you can solve it.
That's a fascinating stat. I have not heard that before. You said 130 billion parcels out there, and only 25% were basically owned by the US, so to speak.
25 billion of the 130 billion in the US.
Okay.
Yes. So just that's fat, like all of us, that have packages arriving at your door, you would kind of think that the US is leading, but actually we're not. Like there's many more parcels out there. So I just think about where these solutions could go outside of, the borders of the US to deploy these solutions and solve that problem.
What are these, I would imagine, well, to get into it, I'm sure the parcel. What am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is that how much of this is like consume. I mean, I guess all of it's, again, a lot of it ultimately is going to be consumer driven, but relative to like parcels that is B2B versus B2C,
Yeah,
OEM parts versus, a package of masks or pens, right?
Yeah, the numbers that I'm talking about are B2C, and there was something. These are all parcels, right? This is all like just parcel volume out there. Now, it might be that it's much larger parcels, so it's sort of like non-conveyable parcels, but yeah, that's a lot of that.
Well, that's a lot. Like I said, I hadn't heard that stat
Huge.
before, and I think that's fantastic. That's pretty interesting. And one of the things that I have heard, they're reporting is, after the pandemic, you get into March, April, May. I think through 2020, that e-com, for example, like exploded. It was like a 40% growth and just in that year alone, which obviously is going to accelerate, going to push, all those parcels there. So one thing
it's about parcels, and it's what we also call eaches, right? So in this world where we moved from product going into distribution centers in full cases, and those full cases going to stores, and then people would put them on the shelf so you and I could go buy them.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't happen anymore, right? So now all of those full cases are opened up at the distribution center, and the worker has to take out the each, right? The bottle of water, if you will, and then that goes in. Maybe you mix that with a bottle of water and, I don't know, a mobile phone or something, things I'm looking at now. And then that goes into a parcel, right? So everything at this each level has caused, it's adding to the challenge because there's just not enough human labor to manage all those eaches.
Yeah, there was an interesting stat that, certainly at the A3, at their conference in, I think last summer in Memphis, there was an interesting stat specifically about that, talking about as the growth of e-com comes in, that I can't quote it 100%, but it was a very short time period within, I say 3 to 5 years, that it was going to completely, the amount of jobs needed, which we're already, right now, I was reading a stat, it was there were like 6 million people short for jobs right now. Across the board. That is going to increase even more, but specifically into this warehousing and e-com piece, specifically because of that, so as everything's becoming more distributed. Yeah,
there's several vectors to it. When we're talking about all of this volume and the throughput need, also the other thing to say is, like, few people want that job because that kind of work is quite onerous, right? Those environments are not set up well for humans. They're hot in the summer, they're cold in the winter, they're loud, there's forklifts, there's horns, there's all kinds of mechanization going. So, the way that we want to help in the industry, and we want to uplift those workers' lives, is that you put a robot solution there, and then that person can interact with their robot instead of having to interact with all those eaches. It's just a far more fulfilling kind of a role. So, and it's just kind of to tie this back, the symbiotic part of it is that the worker has a more meaningful role. They stay in the job. It benefits the person has given them that job, right? So they have a better relationship, and we feel great to be a part of that.
Excellent. One thing that I'd be curious about, just as far as like your technology and what you have, just from a training standpoint. You were mentioning there, one of the challenges and one of the things you often hear with automation, whether it's robotics or whatever type of automation, that, we're taking jobs away and whatnot. We can say, all right, well, first of all, the reality, you mentioned, it's hard to find labor right now. So people are saying, yeah, I don't want to do this for whatever reason, right? I'm done with this, I'm moving on, whatever. The reality of it is there's a big gap there. But let's put that aside for a second. For those who are actually, they're still in the workforce, there is fear and trepidation sometimes. Hey, this process that I do over and over again, maybe I'm going to get replaced. But if we can train and redeploy that existing workforce, just as you mentioned, hey, you're going to be assisted by, as we look at with a cobot, right? What does it take from a training standpoint that you're seeing with your customers to say, hey, to be able to redeploy an existing workforce to have, hey, I got a cobot here, and then here's the new process?
Yeah, that's such a great set of questions there. So our approach has always been, let's go back. The former way that perhaps this problem was being approached and that people were reacting to was robots are going to take our jobs, and that like you can have a dark facility and it's all just like robots doing all of this stuff. We've never believed that. We believe that in order for the solution, so you take the AI technology, I talked about like virtual to physical transfer learning, take the AI, you take the configuration capability, it needs to have a human interacting with it, right? So the human work changes, as I said, you sort of up level that human's work. So we're very proud of our what we think of as human-centric design. So all of our systems have the human worker in mind in terms of the user interface that they have that tells them what's going on and how to do something. So lights and indicators, things like that. So that's number one. Number two, we have developed what we call the robot operator program. So think of it this way: if you're the customer and you're managing this facility and you're hiring these people, we're working with our customers to allow our customer to post jobs that say robot operator in a parcel facility. So now you can post the job for a robot operator, you can bring the person in, and then we have programs that we've worked out where, for example, there's additional training. You can do training right from the user interface at our system. You can also do training online. So it uplifts them in a way that they get to learn new things. And then there's, of course, like moments of pride around Ambi sort of apparel and pins and things like that, that help them feel like, this is great. I get to come to work and I get to interact with this robot. So I think the world of thinking that robots are going to take over all these jobs completely is really doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, well, I think that's interesting. Your robot operating program. Have you seen when you've deployed this that your customers are finding it maybe a little bit easier from a recruiting standpoint to recruit new workers in because they're, it's fascinating and it's new technology?
Well, so yes, and I want to say, so one of our key customers has told us just recently in the last month that when they post for this role, and just to say levels, when they post for this role, they are able to post as a level 4. And I don't know the distinction between like 1 and 4 or 10, but they talk about it as like, oh, it's a level 4. So there's like many more people that are interested in level 4. I mean, it just seems to make sense than they would be a level 1, which is like the very basic stuff. And then finally, because you asked about training and familiarity with the solution, we find it to be sort of a half day, sometimes less, for them to understand how to interact. It's very intuitive. I mean, even I can do it. So it's pretty easy to learn how to interact with the robot.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I brought my my son, he's 8, to Modex, so he could see all this. He's been begging me, like, come on, go. I went to ProMat in 2019, and there was like an R2D2. Somebody had,
I remember that.
And I was like, that is awesome. I sent videos, and he was like, Dad, you have to take me to Chicago next year. So anyways, we didn't see R2D2, but there was a lot of really cool robots. And one of the things that struck out to me is that, how easy it was for him to be able to program and the excitement, and I'm thinking, this is amazing, where the technology is going now that you said half a day, right? You can go and you can train on this, and it brings a new sense of purpose and excitement to the role. And it's assisting in a very material way.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I just have to say right now, please don't tell my 9-year-old that your 8-year-old was able to go, because he specifically asked me, and I thought somehow that you had to be 18 to get in there.
So you are. I didn't know that. So, anyways, we'll just cut that. From that.
Okay. Yeah. We won't talk about that at all anymore. Well, and also the other thing is like our kids will be like, my son is much more capable to do anything related to technology than I am. It's pretty fascinating to watch him do stuff on his iPad.
Crazy.
But yeah, I think back to the interacting with our system, the intent was to make it easy and approachable, so that the employees of our customers would have no hesitation. And just to that point of like, Is this robot going to take my job? In the early on time, we were concerned with that in terms of our first deployments. And what we found to our delight is that there's a lot of pride, right? So people, the employees out there that are these warehouse workers that are doing this hard work, very proud of the fact that they have their system and their, one operator I spoke to one day, she was doing a selfie to send to her kid who was in high school. And she's like, now I can send a selfie that I'm working with this robot. And her high schooler wrote back and was like, Mom, that's really cool. Can I work there at some point? I mean, who would think that? Who would think that that would be a world where, her kid, her teenager would be excited to come do the work that she's doing?
Exactly. And I think we're seeing that play out. That's awesome. That's great. Okay. So great stuff here. I have one final question. This is a fun question.
Okay.
Here it comes. It's the magic wand question. I'm going to give you a magic wand. You can solve one industry challenge, okay? But it can't be labor, can't be supply chain, and it can't be my customers or my prospects, companies that I'm talking to, wide open, yeah, I need my solution. What would that be for you?
Okay. It can't, and it's one of my customers who are asking, or just anybody in the world?
Just in general, a lot of times people say, hey, listen, I wish, procurement would just be like, yeah, go ahead. Like, oh yeah, it's as easy to deploy. We need this, go.
I will put it in this place of, so I'll use our sort of general technology and capability, like the thing that I wish was possible in the world. Which is, we are still a long way off from robots being able to do things in the way that we look at, you look at a future sci-fi kind of a movie. And I guess the one thing that I would wish for is an advancement such that, the robots have just broader capability from the start. So I think about, a couple examples. I think about having robots that are, I don't know, going down the street. One of them is how this notion of, there's a few people working on this notion of delivery to your door.
Yeah.
And I think I want, maybe I don't want this, but I think I want a world where there's robots that are out there interacting more in the world with us humans and sort of uplifting all of us. And there's a lot to be done in the world. You look around and you think why did somebody not pick that up, for example, or whatnot? So I suppose that's my one. And again, I'm thinking that world hunger is off the table in terms of the answers that you were looking for. But I think that is one that and it will come someday, but I want it to be in my lifetime.
Well, I think we're beginning to see more and more of that. I was one of the funny discussions I had on that topic with my son after coming back from medics. He was like, Dad, they need to make a robot that can pick up my room and can clean up, and we,
Yeah.
And it's funny, but you start seeing you're starting to see more things slowly roll out. Let's say, lawn care, for example. I mean, Husqvarna's got their, robotically, and certainly the Roomba has been out forever, right? But it's interesting. I think we'll see more of these things slowly deploy out. I think safety is probably the big thing right now. But even more, you go to, what is it, I believe the airport in Cincinnati. They're rolling out with a lot more of robotic solutions that are cleaning and trash, and there was a couple of other things. It seems to be a good. They like to test a lot of things there. But.
I would say your son has a really good one. And if I had thought for a moment about my son's room, because again, it is such a mess. And it's not even, it's just cluttered. There's a lot of projects going on in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that we live in a time where, just look back over a couple of generations and look at how the hockey stick, where this is going. It's pretty amazing. And, hopefully I'll be able to live long enough to see other huge strides forward. But what we're doing right now is also incredibly exciting. So I'm happy for what I have.
That's awesome. Well, no, listen, I think it's exciting. I think that world definitely is coming, and it'll be interesting, very interesting to see what that looks like. The world of the Jetsons that we were all told was going to be here in 2000, but it's a few years behind. But listen, hey Jim, I've really enjoyed our conversation and our time. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and your story, and letting me sort of poke and prod a little bit, asking you some questions that may be relevant and on and off topic. I appreciate you've been a good sport, and I've appreciated it.
Loved your questions. Thanks, Danny.
All right, well, thanks. Okay, well, that wraps up today's Industrial Sage Executive Series interview. This is with Jim Leifer, who's CEO of Ambi Robotics. If you'd like to learn more about what they're doing, you can go to ambirobotics.com. There should be a link in the show notes or on the webpage or wherever you're watching or listening. That's all I got for you today. Thank you so much. Listen, if you're not subscribed, I highly recommend subscribe. Why? Because you're missing out on great content like this that we do every week, and there's even more stuff coming. We even have a really cool documentary series that's going to be rolling out very shortly called Industries of the Future. You don't want to miss that. That's going to be fantastic, where we're highlighting what companies are using technologies to roll out for solutions for their customers' problems. Things like computer visioning, robotics, AI, bioenergy, all really cool stuff. So that's all I got for you. Thanks so much. And I'll be back next week with another episode on Industrial Sage.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode. Get notified every time there's a new episode by signing up for our email newsletters. You can also subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're there, please leave us a review so more industrial professionals can find us. Want us to tell your story? Go to industrialsage.com. This week's episode was produced by Rika Wiersma, filmed and edited by Optimum Productions, and our executive producer is Danny Gonzalez. Thank you for watching Industrial Sage.